What is secondary picketing, and what do you as an employer need to know about it during a strike or a lockout? Secondary picketing or off-site picketing is an important issue, and you need to know a lot about that as an employer facing a potential dispute. In 2002, the Pepsi, what's now referred to as the Pepsi decision, culminated in a real change, a real sea change for the labor law landscape in Canada. In January in 2002, the courts ruled that secondary picketing was now legal wherever, whenever in Canada. And that's a real change. So as long as the secondary picketing was now legal in 2002, as long as it wasn't tortious or criminal. So tortious, so someone civilly could sue, or criminal. And the only areas that were excluded from secondary picketing were management homes. So a huge change to the labor law landscape and how employers need to get up to speed when it comes to secondary or off-site pickets. From a strike provider's perspective, it really changed our landscape as well. Strategically and tactically, for the first 8 years prior, from 94 to 2002, we really targeted the picket line environment with most of our resources. Now we had to move a lot of the resources, the bulk of our resources, offsite to mobile teams, what we call flying injunction teams, to supplier areas, to customer location. So it really changed our life and our world in the strike business, but it has now for 25 years, it's had a legacy impact on employers. So in today's video, I want to talk about how that will affect you as an employer and how you can plan and better prepare for that. I'm Rob Relieder. I'm the founder of Western Protection Alliance here in Vancouver. If you like this information and you find it useful, please like and subscribe below. So number one is the offsite picketing is now not a side issue. From the last 25 years, it's a primary issue. And like I mentioned, it needs to be directed and addressed as such. So the gate is now not the only area where employers should focus their energies. The whole supply chain is now impacted, and you need to address that in your labor dispute plan. So when secondary picketing became lawful in 2002, again, as long as it wasn't civilly or criminally impactful, that really changed that landscape. And so there's now the areas where pickets can be really very far-reaching. So when it comes to customer locations, your suppliers, all those areas now are impacted. It's not where the picketing really is, but now if it's legal. And so that's an important distinction that employers need to be aware of. So your legal team, your security personnel, and operations need to be all in the same page for that. That's very important, that in lieu of the secondary picketing 2002 decision. So that's number one. Offsite picketing is now a big issue, not a side issue. And number two is pressure follows the people, not just the property. And there's that controlled movement at the gate, which I've talked about in previous videos, that is really impacted by the secondary picketing legislation, or court decision, I should say. So the managers, the executives, the supervisors, these are all targets now of secondary picketing. And even though the courts have ruled that management homes cannot be picketed, where they go, their routes, all those things are now under scrutiny and should be addressed in your pre-strike plan. If you're utilizing replacement workers, they're obviously a huge target for secondary pickets and one of the highest threat levels in your risk assessment, obviously, and that needs to be addressed. Everything from hotel parking lots to shuttle drop-offs to restaurants, all those areas are potential secondary picket locations. You know, in Canada, it's not uncalled for people to see picketing at all those locations, and really anytime during the day or anytime during movement of that, expect that. And again, that has to be addressed in that pre-strike plan. The kind of normal travel routes need to be really addressed and altered in that pre-strike plan, because people will use that as a game plan, a roadmap to target those individuals for secondary picketing. And let me just touch on why secondary pickets are also a potential danger when it comes to employers during a strike or a lockout. Sometimes the secondary picketing isn't done by the unionized staff that are on strike. It may be sympathetic pickets. It may be pop-up protests that we're seeing more and more these days. But I wanted to address that because that's a higher risk, because we as strike security providers, but you as an employer, you can't identify those individuals. They may be from sympathetic pickets or family members or people that just want to create havoc in those areas and maybe have a political or some kind of a grudge to bear. And so those can't be identified. So those are potential threats that, again, you need to address logistically in that pre-strike plan. So thirdly, your suppliers and contractors can turn around before hitting the picket line. And there's pressure that maybe you as an employer don't see when it comes to your suppliers, transportation, contractors, etc., that maybe they're being harassed at home. Maybe they've had threats or secondary picketing hit them at their facility. Maybe it's your customers. That whole supply chain is affected potentially. So don't assume that the picket line will be the lightning rod for a lot of those issues. And again, that needs to be addressed prior to strike action by you as an employer. Your contractors need very good and clear communication from you as an employer and need to be addressed within that strike plan. The routes that they're taking, the plan for security for them, if they are stopped, what do they need to do as individuals or their staff if they're being harassed or picketed, and what is the protocols around that from a security perspective. That's important. So really, like in business, communication really helps eliminate that confusion, particularly when it comes to secondary picketing. And that will really save your production schedule, even if you aren't operating. So that really emphasizes that communication. And employers need to treat suppliers as part of their strike plan. They're your partners in a labor dispute, and you have to share with them as much as you're comfortable in sharing, but they're your partner, and don't leave them hanging when it comes to how they fend for themselves. That's not the right thing to do in any world. So that's going to be critical, and that you're there and they're your partners in this dispute. And then lastly, social media. When it comes to secondary picketing, social media has really become a second picket line, if you will. So, which I mentioned earlier, these Snapchat or X or these pop-up protests can be really staggering when it comes to the amount of people that can be summoned very quickly. And logistically, it's very difficult. So people need to see that and be aware that, it could be photographs, it could be Facebook posts, whatever social media, and rumors. You need to realize that those are all pressure points for your supply chain and your staff when it comes to secondary picketing and its impact on those individuals. So please consider that. Those are all impactful when it comes to secondary picketing and the ability for people to muster a lot of people to create havoc for you as an employer during a labor dispute. And that one single social media interaction can have a really great impact. And you need to realize that as an employer, that don't get caught into online arguments and use that as a magnet for creating a social media firestorm. Avoid that. And this all should, though, be addressed in your communications piece in your labor dispute plan. So the communication now with social media is really important because, for example, when we're tasked with our labor dispute plans for employers, we task people that they're deployed to monitor social media, and that's part of their role. And it's a lot of research and fact finding when it comes to a lot of these different platforms. But that's becoming more and more critical when it comes to this tactical implementation of your strategic labor dispute plan. And then lastly, which is again a theme in what what we do is document everything, every picket line crossing. But when it comes to secondary picketing and off-site picketing, that's really, really key, is document everything. If it's screenshotting social media posts and saving them, all that can help you from governing your social media control when it comes to your secondary picketing, but overall in your entire strike plan. Hopefully this has been helpful. If you'd like to reach out to me directly for any more information on secondary picketing or offsite picketing, feel free to reach out to me at 604-271-7475, or my email address is releader@westernalliance.ca. Thank you.